Welcome to the Film Florida podcast. I'm John Lux, and I'm the Executive Director of Film Florida. Before we get to our interview, if you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.26 for our 2026 fundraising campaign. Visit the Film Florida merchandise page at filmflorida.creator-spring.com to purchase Film Florida t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, and more. All merchandise proceeds go to the Film Florida Filmmaker Grant and Scholarship Fund. Jamie Clemens is the Senior Account Executive for Tampa-based Vū Studios. After owning his own production company for 6 years, Jamie joined Vū in 2022, where he now helps clients realize their creative vision using Vū's products and services. Vū is a pioneer in virtual production technology and has evolved from being just a service provider to now offering a full portfolio of hardware and software solutions, giving clients at any level one platform and endless possibilities for production and engagement. We talk Jamie's background, the origins of Vū, the evolution of the company, the future of virtual production, and more on this episode of the Film Florida podcast. Here's my conversation with Jamie Clemens from Vū. Welcome to the Film Florida podcast, Jamie.
Hey, thanks, John. Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
So give us your backstory. Help the audience get to know you a little bit.
Okay, cool. Not super interesting. I was born and raised in West Palm Beach, Florida, to a pretty average upbringing. And film and filmmaking really wasn't a part of my life until probably after high school. There's a lot of people who get into filmmaking, a lot of guys that I've met who are like, yeah, I made skateboard videos or music videos, which is all cool and fun. That just wasn't me. I was a lover of Jim Carrey, was about the depth of my cinema growing up in the 90s and early 2000s. And once I began college, I realized that I think I did have an affinity for film. I had a couple friends that were in filmmaking, seemed really fun. There were whispers that maybe you could make a living doing it. And so I thought like, well, hey, let's give this a shot. And at the time, especially being in a city like West Palm Beach, while it is a very creative location in the US, it's also very big. And I just was not in the circles where I learned maybe the proper ways or right ways to get into the industry. So at that point, someone gave me some advice. Hey, go to school for business, learn film on the job. And so I was able to go to what was a community college, then turned into a state school. So I was able to go there for 4 years, majored in business, minored in motion picture. It was all kind of integrated. And from there, when I jumped out, I worked at some very non-creative businesses that had the opportunity to do video making for them, which was great because they didn't necessarily know what was good or bad. And I certainly wasn't putting out good content. So it was a really great situation to make a lot of mistakes with a lot of grace. And then from there, joined a couple of other organizations, creative director, content creator, X, Y, and Z, did live production for a while with a comedy tour that went around promoting just like healthy relationships, doing these date night comedies. So I really had a lot of experience doing live production at a very basic level, creating content, controlling content that was being put on projectors, run of show, lights, broadcast, things like that. And then obviously commercial filmmaking, storytelling as well. And then in 2016, after having our first child and my wife and I deciding for the short term, we wanted her to stay home in like the very early years before going back to the workforce, we made the great idea to let's just start a business living in West Palm Beach. And so started a company called Loud Life Productions. It was a commercial filmmaking company. Then we moved very shortly thereafter to Lakeland, Florida, which is in between Tampa and Orlando, which is also a very creative city, but luckily for me, very, very small. So I was very quickly able to throw the stone across the pond and find out what was over there and swim in that for a while. And so ran the company for about 6.5 years. Had a lot of fun. I had some decent success considering I still felt very on my own. I had found some success in our local ad fed chapter and, made some really cool content. COVID came. That was wild. We created something called the COVID Chronicles, where we were just doing Zoom calls like this. And I was interviewing people, asking them for the story because I was just desperate for content because everything was shut down. And then along the way, we had a second child. They were getting older, things were getting wild. I ended up teaching for a minute. There's a school in Winter Haven called All Saints Academy, and I had the opportunity to be the digital arts teacher. So that meant from seventh grade to 12th grade, I was doing video, broadcast, digital arts, photography, and yearbook.
Nice.
I was teaching those 5 classes, knew very little about the majority of those things. I could teach broadcast and video just fine. The photography was well enough, but then the digital arts and yearbook was tough, but it really stretched me. And what was great was it really helped me, learning how to lead early creatives. Leadership and management is not a strong suit of mine, but that was just a really great place to stretch me. And so at the same time, I was still running Loud Life Productions. We had a team running it kind of in the shadows. So after 2 years of that, it was pretty exhausting. I knew about Vū Technologies because I knew of Vū Studios, the video agency in Tampa. I really loved what they were doing and what it was all about. It was such a mystery to me, filming something in front of an LED wall called virtual production. But we all knew The Mandalorian did it, right? And so there was something to it clearly. I also learned in my time of filmmaking that I was okay at filmmaking. I was okay at directing. I was okay at editing. I was okay at all those things. But really, what I enjoyed the most and what I felt like I was best at was the client relation and the sales portion of it. Half the time when I was running and operating Loud Life, I'd pitch and sell a big project and then think, dang, I got to go out and produce it. And I just wanted to go on to the next sale. So, that's essentially how I found myself where I am today.
So you brought up Vū. It's perfect segue. For listeners that may not be completely familiar with the company, how do you describe what Vū does? What is Vū?
Well, Vū, like a lot of startup technology companies, has gone through and is continuing to go through a lot of different identity crises. And I say crises with tongue in cheek. We're not in a crisis, but it is kind of like a child growing up through elementary, middle, and high school. They change form a lot. When I first started at Vū, Vū was primarily a virtual production studio. Within almost like a year or so, they went from being basically a subsidiary part of Vū Studios and brought that company so much success doing virtual production that they realized they could be their own business. So they created a business plan and they went out and they essentially raised like $18 million between like capital investments, grants, things like that. And within about 18 months, built 4 world-class virtual production studios across the country. First one was in Tampa. Next one was in Nashville. Then after that was Las Vegas. And then lastly, we did a big old U-turn and came to Orlando and built one there. And so these LED volumes were meant primarily for the intention of hosting, world-class commercials, feature films, episodic work, you name it. And we were not the production company, we were production support. So we created the content, we operated the walls, we helped people make sense of what they wanted to do in our studio since we had the air quotes experience. Everybody was just figuring it out at this time. Yeah, and that was really what it was. And then from there, it really began to shift into, well, we can help people build these as well, because we were getting asked, hey, help us do this. And we also realized it was lucrative for our business to help us stay in operation while we were desperately trying to keep 4 studios booked. And so then we were able to figure out like, hey, if we put this thing on the road with mobile LED builds, that's a great form of business. And if we help people build these just like we've built them, that's a great business. And so from there, the company really began to expand. And then we slowly got into the product market. And I promise I'm almost done with what was supposed to be a simple question. But this is kind of the identity metamorphosis of our company. And so we got to the product side of our company, where as we were building these LED solutions for people, we realized there was 3 common problems amongst everybody, unless they just were like Netflix or Amazon. People did not necessarily have $500,000 plus to spend on a one-time investment for their production. I don't know if you know, but there's not a lot of money in creative. And then 2, not everybody had a 5,000, 10,000 square foot soundstage to put said large volume. And 3, virtual production can be complicated, especially if you're using camera tracking and Unreal Engine. And so they didn't want to have to hire some, high skill, high wage professional on top of what they invested in their equipment. And so we set out to solve that problem, and we feel like we did. And I think the market would say we did as well. We created a product called Vū One. Vū One is a very simple, much more simple, I'm not gonna call it simple, but it's a much more simplified LED setup. And we came up with 4 sizes: the Vū One Mini, which is 12 feet by 7 feet on wheels. And then we have the 16 foot by 9 foot, 18 foot by 10 foot, 25 foot by 13 foot. Pixel pitches varying, primarily though between 1.9 and 2.6. There's a lot more of other important specs rather than the pixel pitch, but that's just kind of a low hanging fruit. So we were able to create those between 99,000 and like 495,000. And the kind of icing on the cake was we have developed and are continuing to develop our software, Vū Studio, which now is really the primary focus of our business. So we went from being a place where people shot films to now building people studios to now essentially empowering them to make their process easier, faster, more creative, and allow more hands to get on the product. Because before it was really hard. It was a barrier to entry was very high.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, you talked a little bit about the other studios that you guys operate in the US. And when you talk about Florida, Nashville, and Las Vegas, those are very different markets. What is the focus for each of them? Because it seems like it would be a little bit different.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it had to do with one, where we did think there was legitimate opportunity, but two, how much does it cost for us to get started in a place? I think most people would think Atlanta, LA, New York. Well, there was a few things about those three locations. For one, they're really expensive just from a real estate and operational perspective. And two, they were already relatively saturated, even back in 2022. And so we wanted to go to places that we knew that we could still reach a whole level of untapped creatives, be wise with our money, and then grow a new market. And while virtual production was kind of booming and on the rise, like a lot of tracks will show it spike and then dip and then slowly re-rise again, like a lot of technology, those were really good spots. So obviously Tampa is because where our headquarters is. Otherwise, we probably would have never set up shop here. But Orlando was awesome because obviously Mickey Mouse lives there and there's a lot of other big companies in that area. It's also just easy to fly to. Nashville was, is, and has been great for the music scene. We've seen a lot of really cool artists come in there and do a lot of really great things. And then Las Vegas is awesome because it's close enough to LA to where it's still in striking distance for a lot of people, but also the events. And that's just a place that people stop to go to anyways. I mean, Vegas is such a booming city. And so we really found that half of our income from the Las Vegas studio was just from people going to the convention center for whatever their thing was, their trade show that they were visiting. And then they would come and throw a massive party in our large volume there. And those were super lucrative for us as well. And so and Orlando was that too, because Orlando is also a big convention area. So we were beginning just to find more and more opportunity, which is why we just kind of fell into those locations.
Yeah. Now, tell us a little bit about your specific role. If I have the title right, you're Senior Account Executive for Vū. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, roles here are fluid. So yeah, some days I'm that, and then some days I'm a content creator here, and then some days I'm on an LED build somewhere. But for the most part, my job was, has been, and still is just making sure that we have sales coming in. So I'm part of a very, very small but mighty sales team. We have an excellent working relationship with our marketing team, so we tandem really well. And essentially, the job from a studio perspective was and still is, if a production company or an agency or a client wants to create content in our studio, they'll talk to me or one or two other people of our studio, and I'll either A, help them make sense of what it is they're trying to do here, because we still oftentimes will find people who have never shot in front of an LED wall, and it's a scary thing, and they do need some counsel on how to make it in. So do that, and then obviously work out the business side, the contract, blah, 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 the boring stuff. Same for mobile. When we set up shop on a football field somewhere for like a media day, navigating and pricing and setting all that up. And then lastly, selling our products. So selling our software, selling our Vū One systems, or doing custom integrations for people. I swear I never thought I would be an LED and software salesman, but that's the lying share of what I do now. So it was what almost 100% creative. And I feel like it was 90% creative, 10% numbers. And now I feel like I've shifted to 90% numbers, 10% creative. But at the end of the day, I get to work with really cool people with really high aspirations, doing some really cool things. And so it's still a win.
And talk a little bit about how I would think it would be an advantage that your own creative content background helps in doing your current role, because you have that vision creatively of what clients are trying to do. So you're not necessarily just the client service person, you're also the creative helping them get from point A to point B with your technology.
Yeah, that's right. And I'm thankful because I feel like that's part of the reason why I did get the job when I got it. Because, like I said, when I started, it was all about helping filmmakers make sense of what they needed to do in here. And so, it helps from a trusting perspective. If I'm gonna buy a house from a real estate agent, I don't want that real estate agent necessarily being fresh out of, getting their realty license. I want them to have some experience to help guide me. And so when I'm talking to somebody about making a large investment for them and their business into this technology, I think it makes them feel better when I'm able to understand the tech that they're already working with, their camera, their lights, when I'm able to help them understand, hey, these are the benefits that you're going to feel. I know what it feels like to do this or worry about that, but this solution is going to help curb those fears in this way and that way. So yeah, it's definitely helpful for me to be able to understand the pain points of this community and then show how our solution can help them.
Yeah. So, Jamie, the company had to have kind of blind faith in the sense of you wouldn't necessarily find a cameraman that is going to say, well, Mr. Client, instead of hiring me to do your camera work, I think you should buy a camera and I'll teach you how to use it. That's essentially what you guys did. Instead of having clients and telling them, you got to come to our studio to use our LED volume walls, we're going to sell you a product and then teach you how to do it on your own. So therefore, you don't need to hire us anymore to do your production. That takes a lot of faith that that's the right business model.
Yeah, and I don't think they anticipated that business model either until they began getting a lot of the same requests that this was something that they wanted to bring to their space also. And so I think our co-founders kind of pushed that off and laughed it off as like, yeah, that'd be great, but that's not what we do. Until they started realizing, oh, we got a dozen inquiries. If we could have done just one, imagine the benefit that that could have been for our company. We just listened to the market and the market wanted to know. But once we began solutioning for the market, then that's when we learned those three problems that I mentioned earlier. And then once we could solve for those three problems, then we really felt like we had a product that we could go to market with. Because before, there's a lot of ambiguity. And we feel like there's a lot less ambiguity now and more of a process. And oh, yeah, we have a software that you can run as well. So for our current studios that we still operate today, yes, we can still put on a very big, complex, Unreal tracking shoot, but I don't remember the last time I've seen one of those come into our studio. What a lot of people are doing is they're just putting a video plate or a still image plate on the wall and shooting on that. So now we've gone from charging 10, 15, 20, $30,000 a day to rent our studio. And because of our own software that we use in our studios, as we should, we now can rent some of our LED walls for as cheap as $350 an hour, and content creators can come in and we just open the door for them and they operate it themselves, having little to no experience in virtual production. And it was kind of the litmus test, like, all right, let's put our money where our mouth is. If we think our product is so good and so easy, can we let Jim Bob, who lives a mile up the road, come in to shoot a folk singer that is his uncle? And if he could shoot that on his DSLR and have a successful shoot, in his opinion, then that's really great, a great data point that we're creating something that is for everyone and not just for the elite.
Yeah. Now, as we talked about, you have decent amount of experience, making your own content. Talk about how View has changed your understanding of what filmmaking can be compared to traditional set-based shoots.
Whenever I would get on a call with a client who was trying to bring a project into our studio and they had some nervousness and uncertainty about what it takes and what to do, I would let them know that shooting a virtual production helps breed more creativity. It gives you more control, and therefore you have more confidence. So, for anybody who's ever filmed something that was dependent on epic sunrise or epic sunset, knows the stress and anxiety that comes 6 to 12 hours before said shoot, because there's nothing that you can control about it. And if it's just right, you only have 7 minutes, to get that shot right. Anybody who's ever shot anything in somebody's backyard always knows that you can guarantee next door neighbor has a lawn company with a weed whacker that day. And so what we're trying to do is let people know, like, yes, green screen technology is still great. And we have white and green cycs in our studios because sometimes people need that tool instead of the LED tool. But there's something that's really powerful about telling somebody, let's pause the sun Let's move the sun. Let's shoot on the front steps of the White House. Let's shoot in Hawaii and Berlin. And, there's a lot of cool things that, like, what I've been telling people is, how many times have you had some creative who starts a sentence with, wouldn't it be cool if? And every producer in the room rolls their eyes because they're like, oh my God, that idea is absurd, you know? And we like to think that shooting in virtual production gives the absurdity a seat at the table for, ideally, a lot less money. Now that depends. If you want to shoot a barbecue scene and maybe audio is not important, go find someone's backyard and shoot a barbecue scene. And we'll tell you that. But if you have some ideas that have question or difficulties, lots of travel, it's more economical, it's more environmental, just a lot of things that really just allow people the space. Not to mention, we're in Florida. There's about 10 months out of the year that nobody wants to shoot a darn thing outside. And I don't know how many people, local Floridians, have come to our space in July and been like, bro, so happy to be in here right now.
Yeah. I know there's no such thing as a typical project at Vue, but from concept to final shoot, walk us through a little bit of the pipeline. And I will say, from my own experience, Vue was kind enough a couple of years ago to allow us to do just a tiny little stand-up shoot there. And the whole idea of the back plates and the flexibility, but also what you need to do before the shoot was a little bit jarring to me. So talk a little bit
Mm,
about kind of that production timeline and how certain parts of the production timeline shift a little bit when using virtual production.
yeah. Ultimately, it's a lot of the same process that traditional filmmaking is, with slightly more emphasis or maybe a redirected emphasis on energy in the pre-production. Everybody knows the saying, we'll fix it in post. It's blasphemy, yet comedy. It's the weirdest satire saying there ever was, but we've all used it and we've all had to do it. In virtual production, a good friend of ours, Mike Finn, has a shirt that he loves that where he scratches out the word post and writes pre, fix it in pre. And we like to think virtual production allows for more opportunity. Obviously, there are many things that are out of our control once the shoot day happens. But rather than going on location scouts, stay in your bathrobe, sit on your recliner, and go on a virtual location scout on a Zoom call where we can take you through the Unreal environment. We can open up the plates and explore, and talk about what things are going to be. So ultimately, creators have their concept. They still need their storyboard. They still need their shot list. Those things are non-negotiables. They have to be done. They can send that to us, and it can either be collaborative, that we choose and pick the environment on the wall. We can help guide that person to know, does it need to be Unreal, or can we save some time and money for you and go, static plates? And then we're able to do previs. So we also have previs software called SceneForge. Now, there's lots of previs softwares out there, but I'm just going to tout ours. It's a 3D workspace. We drop in the LED wall. We can either build a unique custom size wall or we just drop in one of the walls in our studios. We can put content on it, much like Unreal Engine. You put a 3D person, you put a virtual camera there, and you can animate everything to see, hey, what's the litmus test? What's the feasibility of this? Is this even going to work? Or are we going to shoot on a 50? Are we shooting full frame? What are we doing? And so you can change all those things, move your lights around, and feel good about the viability of the shoot. And then from there, you still need G&E. Typically, people aren't getting away with much less than a 1 ton. Depending on the commercial, it's your standard 2 ton. Yes, LED walls and volumes and ceilings can provide ambient and dynamic lighting, but it's kind of like taking a picture of someone in front of a window. If they're not front lit, they're a silhouette. And
Mhm.
so, like I said, much of the production process is still the same. There's just a couple of great nuances where you can do things a lot more virtually rather than being on an on-site tech scout.
Yeah. Now, talk a little bit about the types of productions you guys do at Vue, not just in Tampa, but also in Nashville and in Las Vegas. I mean, you guys run the gamut, but kind of give us the list of things that you guys do, because I think some people think, oh, well, it's either commercials or features, and that's kind of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, commercials and features for sure. I touched on one other topic earlier, music videos, certainly still in the entertainment realm. Something that we've also found really popular, I touched on events, but events now have even led us to this hybrid model where you'll see an executive team creating an annual report video, and they want it to look like a very elevated, high touch tech announcement. So you'll see them slicking our floors, so they're very reflective. And then they have this big wraparound volume, and they just look like a freaking boss, you know? I mean, most of them are bosses, but they just look like they belong there, and they're talking about their innovative strategies and the new products they're releasing. And so we've really seen corporate TED Talk style videos, whether they're being live to tape or live to stream, happen in our studios as well. And in fact, we've seen recently a big uptick. And it feels similar to COVID when that's what people had to do, and now people are wanting to do that. And then I think I touched on it too, mobile LED. So, the professional sports industry has been really good to us. We've been able to go, even though we're in Tampa, we still have to go to the Tampa Bay Lightning. We still have to go to the Tampa Bay Bucks and set up LED walls on the ice, on their practice field. We go to colleges, set up things there for their media day. We don't do the production, but we support them with the virtual production side, documentary work, all those kind of things. So just to give you a couple quick examples, one commercial that worked out really great here in Tampa was Aroma 360. It was like an aerator. It was something that you put in a room and it puts nice smelling stuff in the air. But they wanted to do in 2 days, which was a pre-light and a shoot day. They wanted to do a commercial like had a smell of Hawaii, like they had the smell of a Japanese rose garden, and then one like I think that they were up in the jungle. They were out in the jungle somewhere. And these guys had never shot cafeteria films down in Miami. Shout out. They had never done anything in virtual production before, and they did an excellent job traveling at all different locations in the same place. Corporate videos, there's just a list of corporate businesses, whether or not people know them. We talked about that. Our feature that we're really proud of, Sympathy for the Devil with Nicolas Cage and Joel Kinnaman. That was something that was in Las Vegas. 60% of it was shot on location, diners, parking garages, hospitals, but 40% of it was all shot in a car. Like they were just driving around having this conversation. Somebody holds somebody hostage. No spoiler alerts here. And it's all in a car. And they shot 40% of a feature film with A-list actors in 6 days. They did it between the hours of 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. Everybody could go home and, have dinner with their family at the end of the day. Meanwhile, the movie takes place all at night in downtown Las Vegas. So now rather than having to shut down the strip for several nights, which would have been probably impossible at this point, they were able to do it in our studio. So that was phenomenal. So yeah, those are some of the big ones that we're really excited about.
And one of the things that I've been surprised is the wrong word, but I guess just, so happy to see what you guys have done is your relationship with educational institutions. Talk a little bit about what you do for them. And it isn't just self-serving because you're trying to get something out of them, but I know there's a bigger reason why you're getting so involved in the education side.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. It's so true. I will say that the educative realm, mainly collegiate, higher level, higher ed, is, I dare say, probably our biggest client pool or base. Depending on who you ask, there's 4,000 to 6,000 different entities in the US that would consider themselves a college or a university. And then within each college and university, yes, there's film and broadcast and communication and journalism. So those are 4 different subsets that live in colleges. But now sports. So now we've had 2 or 3 universities, just their athletic department bought our Vū One so that they could do media days whenever, however, wherever. And then now, because we're expanding in services of our software, we're also helping people educate to a much more involved degree, nothing to do with virtual production. So our software has built out experiences and activations where in an immersive setting, whatever the size wall, educators can use our software to take people through really engaging content that either they create or someone else create. They can have us create it. And it's just a new way to really just put people in that spot. And so, yeah, colleges have been really just the lifeblood. And in some ways, the best way that we've been able to craft our software to really serve everybody. If colleges need it to help educate tons of fumbling young students and minds, then professionals can definitely use it to make excellent content.
Well, and they're educating the next generation of virtual production experts.
Yeah, and I think that's a big selling point and something that makes instructors feel good, especially on the production side, maybe less on the medical or non-production. But for them to know that the same technology that they're going to be using in school, they're now large companies, not even just production companies, but Accenture, Pearson, in some ways, NVIDIA. These are some people that we're speaking with that are investors in our company. If they're buying into it as well, there's a good chance that these students are going to see it once they graduate.
Now, talk a little bit about the evolution of the virtual production industry. I mean, just as we've talked about, when Vue really took off in 2020, 2021, there was one kind of tool that people were using. And now, as you've mentioned, there's so many different things. And that's just the evolution of anything. You buy a camera these days, next week it's already outdated.
Yeah.
And I'm sure virtual production and the technology there is similar. So how do you guys stay on the cutting edge of it? And where do you see things going, 5, 10 years from now?
Yeah, that's a great question, and one that I get often when I talk with people on calls. There's no telling what the next display medium will be. Obviously, there's, like you said, technology grows and expands. I remember the first NAB that we were a part of, we were like one of two people with an LED setup at NAB. And if anybody has been to an NAB or Infocom recently, it's almost like you need to wear blue light glasses because you're so inundated with screens. It's wild. And as I look around and see that, I think to myself, wow, I wasn't excited when I first heard that we were turning more into being a software focused company, but I get it now. Everybody is doing this. And so, now that we're past the early adoption phase, this is now going to breed the grounds for whatever this next and new technology is going to be to answer your question. So I don't know. Maybe it's going to be holographs. Maybe it's going to be direct to brain chip. Who knows, John? But what we would like to see is that whatever that display medium is, our software is providing the power behind it. We want to create a solution that is something for everybody. And I know that's a dangerous thing to say. A lot of businesses have gotten way too spread thin, trying to be all things to all people. So we really do take it very seriously as we consider what we do. But at the end of the day, wherever technology goes, if panels just get so excellent that the panels that we're using now are outdated, our software is still going to be there making everyone's lives easier in the pre-production and during production. If it's holographs, if it's brain chips, we want, Vū Studio to be powering that.
And now, what advice do you give young filmmakers or creators that in Florida who are curious about virtual production, but are just frankly scared of it? What tips do you have on how to get started, what to look out for, how to get comfortable?
Yeah. Think about this a lot of way that you see YouTubers right now creating content. They'll buy a green sheet off of Amazon. They'll get a couple of Cowboy Studio or newer, lights, icons, something that's very affordable. And they'll set it up and they just start making content. Maybe it's on their phone, maybe it's on a crappy camera, who knows? And then they take it into some editing software and they start trying to key and figuring out what they're getting right and wrong. So likewise for virtual production, go and buy yourself a 48, 60-inch, 80-inch flat screen TV, set it up on your wall, plug an HDMI into your computer, and either share a screen from Premiere or Photoshop or just open up a JPEG or PDF, put a camera up, and start practicing virtual production. Do it with talking heads, create an interview, do some fun tabletop, get your Stanley Cup, get your sunglasses, get your sneakers, put it on a table, set dress the table, move the camera around, experience and explore the constraints at one level so that when you get to the next, you've already got a couple of scars under your belt to help you understand what to avoid when the stakes are higher. But we live in a time, especially with AI, anything is possible. Go generate the most wildest background in ChatGPT, or become a member of our platform, use Vue AI to spin up an image and use our software to cast it on the wall, extrude it into a 3D image, and get some parallax using our phone app, which extrudes a 2D image to a 3D image, and learn what it feels like to shoot with some minimal parallax. So that's what I would recommend. Get a TV and just start shooting.
Good. Now, you've talked a lot about all the different products. I want to make sure we hit on that because I'm sure somebody listening is like, "Oh, that sounded interesting. Where do I, learn more?" But talk about the products on where people should go if they want to figure out which one is the best fit for them.
So, like I said, our company name is Vue Technologies. Like that's like our legitimate company name on a W-9 sheet somewhere. But we have a lot of other names, Vū Studios, Vue. The View. I mean, there's all sorts of different names. And so on Instagram, we're view.network. That's also our website, view.network, and that's spelled VU network. On LinkedIn, we're Vū Technologies. I know, John, in your information, you'll have my email address and things like that. So people can reach out to me, and I'm happy to send out whatever, you're looking for more information. We have a YouTube page, Vimeo page, all those things. If you just type in Vū Technologies or Vū Studios, if you really have to type in Tampa behind it, maybe that'll help. But we have so much information, every year, now that we've kind of converted into a product company, every year we put out a product showcase that's releasing the newest of what we've developed and what we're developing. So you can find those on YouTube and really catch up on what's new with us.
Jamie, it's been a lot of information today. This has been tremendous. I mean, I've known Vū Studios for a number of years, and I even learned a lot today. So thanks for taking the time to be with us today, share your story and the story of Vū. And of course, thanks so much for your support of Film Florida. And thanks for being on the Film Florida podcast.
Yeah, John, thanks for having me. I hope to chat with some of the listeners if they have any questions or want to learn more. And as always, we appreciate Film Florida, what they try to do for our state, pushing it to be a desirable place for content creators.
Thank you very much. Thanks for listening to the Film Florida podcast. For more information about Film Florida, go to filmflorida.org and like or follow our social media pages. If you're not already a member of Film Florida, please consider joining at filmflorida.org. Please also consider going to our website and donating $20.26 for our 2026 fundraising campaign. Check out the Film Florida merchandise at filmflorida.creator-spring.com, and please remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast.